The following story is about a real homicide investigation with graphic content. Viewer discretion is advised. Previously on The Murder Mind. Right away, I see an email from my homicide sergeant wanting me to look at this cold case from way back in 1988. So I've had cases older than this. I'm not afraid of this 1988 case. The detective shows up to the crime scene and he finds his victim, Leonard Hill, laying face down in the grass area, right on the side of the road. What's interesting, he's got 2 gunshot wounds to the head. On one of the victim's legs, his white jeans that he's wearing, there's a bloody full handprint, and that's crazy.
And then I kind of look closer, and I saw he had been shot in the head.
Oh, wow. I actually see the lead detective identify someone named Michael Flo. This is likely the person that the witness saw running from the area after hearing gunshots. So right now, I need to track down this guy, Michael Flo, because he's got some explaining to do. So what I need to do, I need to track down this Michael Flo character and actually talk to him to see if this is the same person that was seen running from the crime scene. So now I'm looking through the Atlanta police database. When I type the name in, I'm hoping I'm gonna get information that's gonna allow me to locate Michael Flo. An address, a phone number, something that can put me geographically in a space where I could actually talk to this guy. So as I look into the database on a person named Michael Flo, I'm thinking this is probably gonna be easy because the name is pretty unique. But to my surprise, I don't find anything. And this database is pretty thorough. It's a database that most law enforcement agencies use to track people. So any interaction with law enforcement, if you got stopped by a police officer for a field investigation or a traffic ticket or for an arrest or any interaction where your name is even mentioned in the report, you're gonna be in our database. But now I'm thinking this is 27 years ago. And if this person, Michael Flo, has had no interaction with law enforcement, even before this incident date or now in modern times when I'm looking for him, he's not gonna be in our database. That means he hasn't had a ticket, he hasn't had any interaction with our agency, not mentioned in a police report, and in all accounts, he could just be a regular law-abiding citizen. Doesn't mean he's not my suspect. And at this point, I just can't locate him. So every detective has their own method of organizing a file. I have my method, my partners in homicide had theirs, and now we're talking about a case from 1986. There's really no rhyme or reason on how this file is organized. It's literally looking for one thing could be like looking for a needle in a haystack. I don't have any luck finding Michael Flo in my database, but as I continue sifting through this needle in a haystack of a file, I come up upon something that's amazing. Detective Mortlock, the original homicide detective in this case, actually located Michael Flo back in 1988. He talked to Michael Flo, and what Michael Flo was doing that night, he was actually in the area where his victim's body was found. He was drinking with his buddies, having a good time on a nice warm night, and all of a sudden, he hears these gunshots ring out. He takes off, he doesn't go near the crime scene, he doesn't go to investigate where these shots came from. Now that's not uncommon. Most people in those neighborhoods, when they hear gunshots, they're not sticking around to investigate, they're getting the hell on. And that's exactly what Michael Flo did. So Michael Flo tells the detective after hearing the gunshots, he takes off running towards his girlfriend's apartment, which is nearby, still in Mechanicsville. So the original detective, being the skilled and clever detective that he was, he wants to alibi the story from Michael Flo. So he locates Michael Flo's girlfriend, interviews her, and in his report writes that she too heard gunshots, looked out of the window and saw a light-colored car leaving the scene in a hurry. So 2 things are happening here. We have an initial suspect who was seen running from where the gunshots came from an individual witness, identified now as Michael Flo. Michael Flo was then interviewed by the original detective, says he ran to his girlfriend's house. Independent of Michael Flo, that girlfriend hears the gunshots, looks out the window, not only verifies that Michael Flo ran to her house and told her what had just happened, she herself, when looking out the window, saw a light-colored car fleeing the scene in a hurry. So now, in consideration of this witness seeing this light-colored car fleeing the scene, I have to think back to the original crime scene. This victim was found on the side of the road, no shoes on, socks that were pristine. It looked like the body was dumped there. So now, with this witness saying a light-colored car fleeing the scene, likely this body was transported there, which may mean there's more than one person involved in this case. So all this information is great because all the pieces of the puzzle are really coming together. I'm starting to see the picture form in my head of what happened through this original detective's report. Now, that witness, the girlfriend who actually saw a light-colored car leaving, it's very important at this point in my cold case investigation. I gotta make note of that light-colored car. At this point, I don't know who I'm going to develop as potential suspects. But if I do, and a potential suspect owned a light-colored car in 1988, that's one more piece of the puzzle that may bring me closer to solving this case. Now, I know Detective Mortlock's work. Although I'd never met this man, he was a cold case detective, and through my career, I had the opportunity of investigating many cases where he was the lead detective on. So through his legacy, through his history of how I see him investigating these cases, I was confident that Detective Mortlock was correct when he alibied Michael Flo out. Doesn't mean I don't still need to talk to Michael Flo, but right now, I put him on the back burner. He's not a priority for me. I want to talk to all these people that the original detective talked to because over 2 decades have passed. So I want to see if their stories change, if their recollection is different. And that's what we do in cold cases. We want to go back and talk to those folks to see if anything changes. Maybe they've remembered something they failed to tell the original detective. So my mission at this point is to locate all of these original witnesses and try to re-interview them one more time. In any homicide investigation, motive is so important. Many times, if I can figure out why someone was killed, it brings me closer to finding out who actually did it. Why was it done? So who better to tell me all about my victim than the victim's own family? I understood that he had children, he had a wife, so I need to speak to the family of this victim to find out exactly what was happening at the time with this victim in 1988 that may bring me closer to finding out the why. If I could put my finger on the why this happened, it's pretty much a straight shot to the who. So I reach out to the victim's wife, and to protect her identity, I'm gonna call her Susan. I call her on the phone, I explain to her what's going on, and she invites me to her apartment. So immediately, I hang up and I head to Susan's apartment.
The time is 8:50 a.m. Detective Velazquez, Atlanta homicide.
And as always, I recorded this interview, and we're going to change Susan's voice to further protect her identity.
Hi, how are you?
How you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
I want to make sure that I'm still sensitive to this family who's been grieving now for over 2 decades. So when I go there, my mission is to get as much information as I can about my victim in this case, but at the same time, trying to be there almost as a grief counselor to let them know that, hey, I understand I'm opening this wound that you may have closed a long time ago, but I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm looking for justice, not just for this victim, but also for this family. And that's the approach I took when I went to go visit Susan.
Pleasure to meet you.
Pleased to meet you.
You just have a seat over here and talk. This is very nice.
So what I've encountered so many times is I'm connecting with the wife of this particular victim. When I get there, it's not just gonna be Susan. And true to form, when I arrive to meet Susan at her apartment, I walk into her living room, and there sits Susan's mother and Susan's sister.
Hello.
That's my mother, that's Miss.
Hi, Miss. How are you? Don't get up. Nice to meet you.
This is a little different for a homicide detective because it's almost like a performance. You're walking in and you're being evaluated. It's almost like a job interview. They're wondering whether I'm qualified to investigate the death of their loved one. I'm confident in my abilities. I've been doing this now 15 years. So right now, I'm performing. I'm trying to sell myself because information is the most valuable commodity. And right now, that's what I need. I introduced myself to all of the family members and told them I'm here as a cold case detective, hoping I can bring justice to the death of your loved one.
What's your name?
Detective Velazquez. Nice to meet you. Very good. So, you know, we occasionally we get assigned cases and people. I mean, we have a bunch of open cases. So one of my supervisors was looking through the old cases and assigned this one to me. So, like any other case, what we do is we go through the file and we look at everything that the detective did back then. And then one of the first things we got to do is re-interview everybody. You know, everybody that the detective talked to, including the wife and friends and, you know, whomever.
So as I begin to explain to my victim's wife, Susan, that I'm just a cold case detective looking at several cold cases, and this is one of them. It's one of the cases that many of us in the homicide unit are assigned or choose to look at ourselves. I chose not to let her know that her own son, Antonio, contacted me asking me to look into this case. I don't want there to be any interference, and I don't want any hearsay conversation going back between Antonio, either her sister, her mother. I want this to be clean. I want to hear it from her mouth, what her recollection was, especially trying to build a timeline. So at some point, I may tell her about her son reaching out to me, but right now, that's not what I'm doing. I want to solely focus on getting information from Susan from her direct memory. So I wanted to know a little more about her husband, Leonard Hill, and Susan tells me, well, he actually had a nickname. He went by Pinto, which was good for me to know because many times I don't know who I'm going to interview later. They may refer to my victim as Pinto, and now she's confirmed that he goes by Leonard and the nickname Pinto.
I read some of the things that the detective wrote, but this, if you could recall, like this kind of run back that day, what happened or what you recall. I know it's a long time.
We went to a party that night, and he never did come home.
Susan starts out by telling me that there was a party that night, and that was the last time she saw her husband was earlier in the day before she went to this party. And I asked her, okay, well, that's good. Where was the party?
Where was the party at?
It was at this center at Dunbar.
Okay.
It's in Mechanicsville.
Mechanicsville. That's exactly where this victim was found. She quickly corrects herself and says it was at the Dunbar. I knew exactly what she was talking about.
Not Mechanicsville.
Dunbar Rec Center, I know.
Yeah, Dunbar Recreation Center.
Rec Center, okay.
Of course, the next question, did you see your husband at the party? Well, she quickly said they didn't go to the party together. Susan goes on to tell me that the original detective from 1988, back when he interviewed her then, mentioned to her he had spoken to some other people who told him that they actually saw the victim and Susan at this party arguing.
And people said been saying that we had an argument at a party, but nothing like that happened.
Okay. And who were you with at the party?
It was a bunch of people I was with.
Okay.
It was a bunch of people.
So now I want roll call. I want to know who was at the party. These may be potential witnesses, either the original detective already interviewed or someone he hasn't. So she starts going down the list, her sister, her friends, relatives, but she doesn't mention the victim. So I ask her point blank, was the victim at the party?
Did he ever come to the party?
You know what? They said he did.
Okay.
I don't believe it because I never seen him.
You never saw him. Okay.
So right now, Susan has introduced to me two inconsistencies, mentioning the original detective talking to people who said they saw them arguing at the party, and now Susan telling me that her husband was not at the party. This is 27 years later. I'm not feeling like this is something I need to really focus on. This is very common in cold case homicides that are decades old. Memories fade, things change, they don't really put timelines in the right order. I'm not really alarmed at this inconsistency right now. Had this been a wife I was speaking to a day after the murder and these inconsistencies existed, that would be a huge red flag. But right now, I'm not that concerned about it.
What time did you leave the party?
I want to say about maybe 5:15, 5:30 in the morning.
Okay. That was a good party.
It really was. We didn't start till about midnight. It was a birthday party.
She tells me that when she got home, her husband was not there.
He wasn't home. Was that unusual for him not to be home?
Well, he worked at different hours too.
Okay.
And sometimes he wouldn't come home.
Okay.
And sometimes he did come home.
Okay.
But, you know, man that liked to gamble, and he had hours out there.
Okay.
So one of the main purposes of me interviewing this victim's wife is I'm trying to figure out why this happened. And now Susan has just introduced a possible motive. She tells me that her husband was a gambler. We all know that many people fall victim to violent crime because of gambling debts. Now, could this have been something that happened to this victim where he's out all the time? Susan already said it's not uncommon for him to be gone at all hours of the night, many times during the week. Now he's found dead. Could it be that he had a gambling debt that went so bad and he paid the ultimate price?
So it wasn't unusual for him not to be home. And do you remember, when was the last time you saw him that day?
That morning, that Saturday morning, I seen him.
Okay.
Susan tells me she last saw her husband the morning before the murder when she left her house with Antonio to take him to football. The same Antonio that later, as an adult, reached out to us to help solve his father's murder.
And I went to the football field all day. We had a tournament with Antonio. So I didn't get to see him anymore that day before that party.
Do you remember what he was wearing that day?
A shirt with a lot of flowers in it.
Okay.
Some tennis shoes.
Okay. Do you remember what color?
I think it was white with some white pants.
She describes the victim, her husband in this case, wearing a floral shirt and white pants. Exactly what he was wearing when he was found. Exactly what he was wearing when I'm looking at the crime scene photos. She had a remarkable memory. I did not expect her to remember that in such great detail, but she hit the nail on the head. So I know I'm on the right track. So one of the things from the crime scene, if you recall, the victim was not wearing any shoes. So I want to know, since Susan had such a great memory of what her husband was wearing the morning before he was killed, I wanted to know, did she ever find his shoes in the house?
Did you find any of those things in the house? Because you know, when they found him, he didn't have any shoes on. So did you see, was his shoes at home at all?
Nope.
Susan quickly told me no. There was nothing out of place. His shoes weren't there, and the last time she saw him, he was fully clothed with what she described, including his shoes. So of course, the real reason I'm here, I'm trying to find out motive. And one of the questions I always ask my family members of my victims is if they have any idea who may have wanted to harm their loved one. Susan quickly told me she had no idea. Nothing came to mind that made her think someone would want her husband dead. So right now, I'm still digging, trying to get more information.
Do you know of any of his friends who he used to hang out with?
Well, people that he gambled with.
Okay. As far as the relationship you guys had, what would you say? How was it, you and him?
We really loved one another.
Like anything where a spouse is killed, Susan, in my opinion, is not completely off the hook. I'm not feeling her though. I still have to vet the spouse like I do in any other case. So I want to know what their relationship was like. I want to get past this idea that there could be motive, that she wanted him killed.
Like, how long had y'all been together, you and your husband?
15, 16,
Before he was killed?
17, might be 18 years.
Wow.
Yeah, a long time.
Wow. Okay. That is a long time.
So Susan goes on to tell me that they had been together for a very long time, and just like a regular couple, they had their ups and downs, but it was nothing remarkable. She didn't say anything more to make me believe that there was some other nefarious actions going on. She basically described their relationship as a normal couple, living together, raising children, all the problems and good times that couples have. Susan goes on to tell me that her husband was also close with the other members of her family, in particular her brothers, and she describes one of them as Daryl Taylor. She later says his real name is Willie Taylor. He just goes by Daryl, and that Daryl and her husband were very close friends.
Okay, so you said Willie had a close relationship. Were they friends?
That was my brother.
Okay, they were all hanging out. Were they just like, y'all were just one big family?
Yeah, you know, we could have cookout and all that.
Susan further explains to me that although the marriage was a typical marriage, that her husband was actually the jealous type.
He was jealous. In a lot of places, he didn't want me to go.
Okay.
Because the guy partied was, he always said, him, this man was a friend.
Him and who?
The man partied that it was. It was this man, his name was that was his birthday party.
And this friend was the same person who threw the party the night that Susan attended. It was his party. So now, Susan has now introduced another scenario. So as Susan is telling me this, I suddenly remember one of the reports that the original detective had in the file. He indicated he got some information that Susan and the friend of her husband, the same man who threw that party that night may have been having an affair. So I flat out asked Susan.
I gotta ask you, so in the file, the detective wrote that there may have been some issue where you and had some type of affair going.
That man never got fresh with me, honest to God.
Okay. You and never had any, y'all never messed with each other.
Never.
But he thought you
And
did.
it was so ironic because this man never even got fresh with me.
Susan quickly refutes that claim. She says there was absolutely nothing going on with this other person, the friend of the victim, and the fact that this person had never even hit on her, never tried to date her, never tried anything, and that her husband simply was just a jealous type.
And what about him in far as being like out there with other women? Was there a history of that, or?
Yeah, we had a history there too. You'll find out when you finish investigating. People gonna tell you.
Yeah, so he had a history of being
Yes.
out in the street with women and stuff.
And that's why I wanted, really worried. That's what this made one of his nights. He mad at me. He just staying out.
Right.
That's how I felt. And I knew he was pissed at me for going to this party. I definitely knew that.
Okay.
So Susan has already told me that her husband did not attend the party. So I asked her, while she was at the party, where was her husband? And Susan said she had no idea. For all accounts, she thought he was home. So of course, I want to know another roll call. Who all lives in the house? I asked Susan point blank, who was in the house the last time you saw your husband? Susan goes on to tell me all of the kids were in the house except for Antonio, who was away at a summer camp. She adds she had a 10-year-old niece who was staying over that night.
So, and what I understand is the children that you guys have are together. Are any of the children his?
Yeah, Antonio Taylor's here.
Susan tells me that her and her husband had a blended family. She had 3 other children from a previous relationship. She had a 17-year-old daughter, a 15-year-old son, and another 10-year-old daughter. And then her and her husband, the victim in this case, had Antonio together. Susan goes on to tell me that all of her children told her that they didn't see the victim that night except for her youngest daughter, who I'm gonna call Lisa, who was 10 years old at the time.
So I'm come home, okay.
Before I came from the party.
Okay, what did she say?
She just said that he came home and he talked on the phone to somebody and she did something for him. I can't remember that now. Don't forget what she said she did, but you can talk to her.
Oh, I will, and I'll ask her, okay.
I absolutely have to talk to Lisa. She very well could be the last person that saw Leonard Hill alive. So now I've gotten a lot of information from Susan. It's been very fruitful, as I hoped it would be.
I think that's it, really.
But before wrapping up and leaving, I had to let Susan know that the original detective did a phenomenal job on this case and really put me in the right direction to try to help solve it. But unfortunately, he's now deceased.
And the detective at the time, Mortlock, he's deceased, by the way.
Yeah.
He was a little bit older. I never met him, but I work cold cases, so I see a lot of his cases. And man, he was a good detective, really was.
And he called us all the time.
Before leaving Susan, I also wanted to let her know one of the working theories that I think, based on my experience, was a pretty good one. That the killer actually knew this victim because his body was dumped.
It looks like, okay, so me as a detective doing cold cases, and I'm not sure what Mortlock shared with you, but for me, okay, it looks like your husband was not shot where he was found, like he was dumped there. He didn't have any shoes on, his hat was missing, so if it was a robbery, they must have missed the money. As a cold case detective, looking at stuff and why people do things. So when somebody kills somebody for a robbery, typically they're not worried about moving the person because they don't know them. So like if I was walking down the street and I was a robber and I just shot somebody and took their wallet, I don't know who it is. It's a stranger, so I'm not worried about somebody finding him. I just want to get away. When somebody usually moves a body, it means they're close to that person. So I'm pretty sure that whoever killed your husband knew him and was close to him and wanted to separate himself from wherever he killed him, meaning he was killed somewhere and now he's got to move the body because he's got to create distance so you can't connect the two. Okay, so the same as if you come into a house and somebody, like I had a case where a man killed his girlfriend and put her in the closet in the kitchen.
If you're following this series, you may remember our last case, Lady Killer, where Lee Hines, who knew and had a relationship with his victim, LaCharity Gaines, killed her and hid her body in the closet. My theory now on the Leonard Hill murder is no different. His body was moved from one location to the next to create distance and space. And I explained that to Susan just to let her know that I think when I finally get to the bottom of this, it's going to be somebody that's close to the victim. And the reason I did that was I wanted Susan to continue thinking about who may have had it out for her husband.
So in 1988, things were different. Like, you know, technology wasn't what it is today.
And this is a case where it's 27 years old, and typically with cold cases like this, I share a little more information because I had the benefit of time. I could look back in history and see what's been done versus I don't know what I'm gonna get from a fresh homicide, so I keep everything close to the chest. So with this particular case, I wanted to share a little more information with this victim's wife, and I explained to her that technology in 2015 is much different than it was in 1988.
So your husband did have white pants on, and you know, obviously if you get shot, there's a lot of blood. So there's a handprint in blood on your husband's pants. In 1988, they were not able to process that correctly because they didn't have the technology.
Okay.
So now the FBI has supercomputers. So that is now, I've sent the photos to the FBI, and I'm actually looking for the actual pants in our property section. So what we do is once they, and that may take a month or so, it could take a while, the FBI, because it's in DC, we had to send it to DC. And what they'll do is they'll run that print, that handprint, through what is called AFIS, is an automatic fingerprint ID system. So anybody that's ever been arrested, if they're in the system, which if they have been arrested, they'll be in there, we're gonna get a match. So we may know, you know, sooner or later who that person is. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the person that killed him. It could be, I would think that it was probably two people. Whoever killed him had help, but you know, that's a good start, you know, whoever that person may be. So, and that could be a month or even longer. It could take longer than that. So, do you have any questions for me, or?
No more than I'm glad you're working on it.
Okay.
So I end the interview with Susan, and I promise to keep her updated on any developments, and I leave. Right now, I'm leaving this interview with Susan excited. I need to find Lisa, who's now an adult. She may be the key to solving this case right now. So I have Lisa's number. I'm gonna call her up to find out what she remembers on the night that she last saw her stepfather, Leonard Hill. And as always, I recorded the call, and we're gonna disguise her voice to protect her identity.
Hello?
Hi, this is Detective Velazquez. Is this,
Yes, it is.
When she answered the phone and I explained to her who I was, Lisa was hyped. She was super excited that someone was reopening this case because it had been something that she's been living with for the last 27 years.
Okay, let me ask you this. Is there any new leads, or you just doing a refresh on it?
We're doing a refresh on it, but there's a lot of work to be done on it still. Like, there's some things that probably could have been done back in the 80s that wasn't done. We're gonna see what we can do, you know, technology-wise,
Oh, great.
and see if it may help, you know, stuff that may not have been available back then.
As I start talking to Lisa, I tell her to take me back to the time that she was 10 years old and she last saw her father.
How old are you now, or how old were you then?
I was 13 then. I'm 40 now.
She actually was not 10, she was 13, and her mother got that wrong. Nevertheless, that's helpful because 13 to 10, that's a big gap. She's more mature at 13, so now I'm thinking her memory's probably gonna be sharper than that of a 10-year-old. I tell Lisa, continue telling me what you remember the last time you saw your stepfather.
Okay, what do you remember about what happened?
I remember him calling me. He called me and said, open the door for him.
What Lisa says is that particular night, the phone rang, and it was actually the victim, Leonard Hill, telling her that he was on the way home and to open the door when he gets there. So I asked Lisa point blank, do you know where your stepfather was coming from? And Lisa said, absolutely.
And he was in Mechanicsville at this gambling house.
Here we are again, another reference to Mechanicsville, the same area where this victim's body was found. And I've got two references to gambling from the victim's wife and now his stepdaughter, who factually says that's exactly where he was coming from. So I've got to put a lot of stock into this. This is likely the reason why my victim was killed, and it also brings in the theory that it was someone connected and close to the victim. Otherwise, it'd be no need to dump the body if it was truly a stranger on stranger crime. That's all I've gotten so far to go on, and here's another witness putting another piece of this puzzle together for me. Lisa then tells me that the victim arrived.
Okay.
And I remember opening the door, he came in the house with a bottle of liquor.
I wanted to know what time this was, and Lisa said it was between 2 and 3 a.m. Bingo. We're now closing the gap on this timeline.
And we talked for a minute. I fell asleep on the living room floor.
And the last thing she recalls is laying on the living room floor and falling asleep. However, before falling asleep, she says the last place she saw the victim, he was laying on the couch.
And when I woke up the next morning, he was gone. But I know for a fact I talked to him. I thought people were thinking that I was like crazy. And I know I spoke to him that night. We talked.
So Lisa goes on to tell me when she wakes up the next day, something strange happened. She actually was in her bed. She went out to the living room. Her stepfather is gone. And she started to question, did she dream what happened the night before? Until she looks at the nightstand in her own room and sees the bottle of liquor that her stepfather had been carrying. Now, Lisa then thinks it wasn't uncommon sometimes when she fell asleep for her stepfather to carry her to her bed to put her to sleep. So that confirmed to her that the night before, what she recalls and what she's telling me now actually happened.
So you're home, you're 13 at the time. Was anybody else home with you?
My oldest brother, oldest sister,
Okay, and then who else was in the house?
and my cousin.
Lisa says that although she was the only one that actually saw her stepfather, she confirmed exactly what her mom, Susan, said. All of her siblings were home that night, including her female cousin that Susan had mentioned was spending the night.
Where was everybody at?
They was all in the room sleep.
They were all sleeping, okay.
So now, in reflection of what Lisa has just told me, this is enormous because what's happened is this really closes my timeline. Lisa tells me she sees the victim at home between 2 and 3 a.m. And why this is so important is that when I think back to the witnesses that actually heard the gunshots, and really what's happening now is this window is 1 hour from when he was last seen alive to where we know from the gunshots at the scene in Mechanicsville, he's dead, 9 miles away from his home. So whatever happened right around the time that Lisa last saw her stepdad and fell asleep. Of course, like I asked her mother, Susan, I wanted to know from Lisa's perspective if she had any idea who would want her stepfather dead. And then Lisa drops this bombshell.
You think it was somebody that you know or the family knows?
I used to think it was the guy that dropped them off.
And I'm like, come again? She goes, I really don't know, other than maybe the 2 men that dropped them off. 2 men. Lisa had never mentioned that. This is huge. Now there's 2 other people in the mix. Could these 2 men be the people that this victim was gambling with?
I remember a car pulling up, dropping them off, a black car. And I know the guys, I remember the guys that dropped them off.
And what I know right now is about to happen. Lisa is gonna give me the names of 2 potential suspects. And you know what it is. I'm gonna tell you all about that in the next episode. Coming up on The Murder Mind.
Over the years, what have you heard happened to your father?
One of the guys said in my mind.
Is this a coincidence? No way. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please hit the like button and subscribe. And please check me out on other social media platforms, Instagram, X, TikTok, and Facebook. Lastly, don't forget to come back for the next episode. You won't want to miss it.